Will Ramos's doorbell chimed, heralding the arrival of his Zanari neighbors and their unconventional request to participate in their mating ritual. The 32-year-old human male had grown accustomed to the diverse inhabitants of his mixed-species apartment complex, but nothing could have prepared him for this moment. Vox and Zara stood in the hallway, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with an urgent rhythm. The iridescent hues of their four-armed bodies shifted nervously as Will invited them inside. The air crackled with tension as Vox, the male Zanari, began to explain their predicament. "Will, we need your help," Vox said, his voice tinged with desperation. "It's our mating season, and we can't reproduce without a third party." Will's eyes widened as he processed the information. The Zanari reproduction process required a facilitator, a role traditionally filled by a designated member of their species. However, since moving to Earth, finding a suitable candidate had proven challenging. "We've run out of options," Zara added, her luminescent skin flickering with anxiety. "Our biological window is closing fast." As the gravity of the situation sank in, Will realized the full extent of their request. The process would involve intimate physical contact with both Zanari partners simultaneously. His mind raced, grappling with the cultural and ethical implications of such an act. Before Will could formulate a response, a sharp knock interrupted the tense conversation. Mr. Thompson, the apartment complex manager, burst into the room, his face contorted with anger. "I heard everything," he growled, glaring at the trio. "This is a violation of our strict no interspecies breeding policy. I'll have you all evicted if this continues." Will's heart sank as he recalled the disastrous incident from the previous year involving human-alien offspring. The policy had been implemented in its wake, and now it threatened not only his neighbors, but his own living situation. As if the situation couldn't get more complicated, Will's phone buzzed with an urgent message from his employer, a human-alien relations firm. The message detailed a new assignment: improve diplomatic ties between humans and Zanari. Will's professional success now hinged on fostering positive relationships with the very species standing before him. The weight of the decision pressed down on Will's shoulders. His choice could have far-reaching consequences for human-Zanari relations, and potentially the future of both species on Earth. The personal, professional, and ethical implications swirled in his mind as he looked from his desperate neighbors to the fuming Mr. Thompson. Will took a deep breath, knowing that his next words could change the course of interspecies relations forever. The fate of his neighbor's reproduction, his career, and possibly the future of human-Zanari coexistence rested in his hands. As he opened his mouth to speak, the air in the room seemed to thicken with anticipation, the bioluminescent glow of the Zanari casting eerie shadows on the walls of his suddenly too small apartment. Will's mouth opened and closed, words failing him as he grappled with the weight of the decision before him. The tense silence was broken by the gentle hum of his phone, vibrating insistently in his pocket. He fished it out, grateful for the momentary distraction. I need to take this," he mumbled, stepping away from the confrontation brewing in his living room. As Will retreated to his bedroom, Mr. Thompson's disapproving glare followed him. Vox and Zara exchanged worried glances, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with anxiety. Will's fingers trembled as he answered the call. "Hello." "Will, it's Dr. Bennett. We need you at the office immediately. It's urgent." Will's brow furrowed. "But sir, it's after hours and—" "This can't wait," Dr. Bennett interrupted. "It concerns your current situation." Will's eyes widened. How did they know? He glanced back at his living room, where Mr. Thompson was now lecturing the Zanari couple on proper Earth etiquette. "I'll be right there," Will said, ending the call. He emerged from his bedroom, addressing the tense group. "I have to go. Work emergency. Please, just stay put until I return." Without waiting for a response, Will grabbed his coat and hurried out the door, leaving behind a chorus of protests and confused alien cliques. The streets buzzed with the usual evening activity as Will made his way to the human-alien relations firm. The sleek, modern building loomed before him, its glass facade reflecting the city lights. Will took a deep breath and entered. Dr. Marcus Bennett, a distinguished man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair, was waiting for him in the lobby. "Follow me," he said, leading Will to a conference room. Inside, they were joined by a sharp-featured woman with intense eyes. "Will, this is attorney Sarah Goldstein, our legal counsel," Dr. Bennett introduced. Will's confusion must have shown on his face because Dr. Bennett quickly explained, "We've been monitoring your situation closely. Your apartment's security system is linked to our database for research purposes." "You've been spying on me?" Will asked, incredulous. "Observing," Dr. Bennett corrected, "and it's fortunate we did. Your predicament presents a unique opportunity." Sarah leaned forward, her voice steady and professional. "Before we continue, you should know that your participation in the Zanari mating ritual isn't explicitly illegal. However, your apartment complex's policy could pose problems." Will's head spun. "So you're saying I should do it?" Dr. Bennett's eyes lit up with excitement. "From a scientific standpoint, your participation could provide invaluable data on Zanari reproduction and social dynamics. It's a chance to advance human-Zanari relations significantly." "But what about the policy? My neighbors?" "Mr. Thompson was furious," Will protested. Sarah's lips curved into a small smile. "We believe we can challenge the policy on grounds of discrimination against alien species. It won't be easy, but it's a fight worth having." As the implications sank in, Will's phone buzzed again. A news alert flashed across the screen. Anti-alien protests erupt at local apartment complex. Will's heart raced as he read the article. A group led by Roger Thompson, the apartment manager's brother, was protesting outside Vox and Zara's apartment. The situation was escalating rapidly. "I have to go back," Will said, standing abruptly. Dr. Bennett nodded. "Go. But remember, Will, this is bigger than just you and your neighbors now. The choices you make could impact human-alien relations on a broader scale." Will rushed back to his apartment complex, his mind blown. The scene that greeted him was chaos. A crowd had gathered in the courtyard, split between protesters and curious onlookers. Signs bearing anti-alien slogans bobbed above the crowd. At the center of it all stood Roger Thompson, his face red with exertion as he shouted into a megaphone, "We won't stand for this alien infiltration. They must go." Will spotted Vox and Zara huddled near the entrance to their apartment, their luminescent skin dim with distress. He pushed through the crowd to reach them. "Are you okay?" he asked, placing a reassuring hand on Vox's shoulder. Before they could answer, a voice cut through the commotion. "Excuse me, I'm Maria Alvarez from Channel 7 News. Can I get a statement?" Will turned to see a woman with a camera crew in tow. He hesitated, remembering Dr. Bennett's words about the broader implications of the situation. As Will opened his mouth to speak, Councilman James Harper arrived on the scene, his presence commanding immediate attention. The crowd parted as he approached, flanked by two assistants. "Let's all calm down and discuss this rationally," Harper announced, his voice carrying across the courtyard. The arrival of the media and city officials transformed the scene. What had started as a neighborhood dispute was rapidly becoming a focal point for the larger debate on human-alien coexistence. Amidst the growing commotion, Will's phone buzzed once more. A message from Vox flashed on the screen. "Time running out. Need decision within 48 hours. Will looked up, his gaze moving from the distressed Zanari couple to the angry protesters, then to the expectant faces of the media and city officials. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, heavier than ever. Whatever he chose to do next would have consequences far beyond his small apartment complex. As the crowd's murmurs grew louder and the camera lights brightened, Will knew he had to act, but with so many conflicting interests and so little time, what was the right choice? The next 48 hours would change everything, not just for Will and his neighbors, but potentially for human-alien relations across the globe. Will's heart raced as he glanced at his phone, the message from Vox burning into his retinas. 48 hours, the weight of the decision pressed down on him, but in that moment, clarity washed over him like a tidal wave. He knew what he had to do. With trembling fingers, Will dialed Dr. Bennett's number. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'll help Vox and Zara." "Excellent," Dr. Bennett replied. a hint of excitement in his tone. "We'll make the necessary arrangements. Stand by for further instructions." Will ended the call and turned to the Zanari couple, their luminescent skin pulsing with anticipation. "Pack whatever you need. We're leaving." As Will hurriedly gathered his belongings, he contacted Attorney Goldstein, briefing her on the situation. Her response was swift and reassuring. "I'll handle the legal aspects. Focus on getting to the facility safely." Within the hour, a nondescript van pulled up outside the apartment complex. Will, Vox, and Zara slipped out under the cover of darkness, evading the watchful eyes of the protesters still gathered in the courtyard. The drive to the outskirts of the city was tense, filled with nervous silence punctuated only by the occasional bioluminescent flicker from the Zanari. As they approached the research center, Will's eyes widened at the sight of the sleek, futuristic building rising from the landscape. Dr. Elena Rodriguez greeted them at the entrance, her lab coat pristine and her eyes sharp with intelligence. "Welcome," she said, ushering them inside. "We must move quickly. Time is of the essence." As they walked through the sterile corridors, Dr. Rodriguez briefed Will on his role. "The neural interface will allow you to synchronize Vox and Zara's bioelectrical fields. It's crucial for the genetic fusion, but it won't be easy. Are you prepared for this, Mr. Ramos?" Will nodded, his mouth dry. "I'm ready." They entered a large circular room filled with advanced equipment. At the center stood a raised platform surrounded by pulsing light fixtures. Dr. Rodriguez guided Will to a reclining chair next to the platform, where technicians began attaching sensors to his temples and chest. Vox and Zara took their positions on the platform, their four-armed bodies intertwining in a complex pattern. Will watched, fascinated, as their bioluminescent skin began to pulse in unison. "Initiating neural interface in 3, 2, 1. Dr. Rodriguez's voice faded as Will's world exploded into a kaleidoscope of colors and sensations. Fragments of alien memories flooded his mind. He saw vast crystal cities on distant worlds, felt the joy of first flight, and experienced the deep cosmic longing that had driven the Zanari to explore the stars. The intensity of the emotions threatened to overwhelm him. Will gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain focus amidst the onslaught of alien experiences. He could feel Vox and Zara's life forces pulsing through him, their genetic codes swirling in a complex dance of creation. Time lost all meaning. Will's body trembled with exertion, sweat beading on his forehead as he pushed through wave after wave of alien sensations. The medical staff hovered nearby, their concerned whispers barely registering in his consciousness. "His vital signs are becoming erratic," a voice cut through the haze. "We may need to abort." "No," Will gasped, his eyes flying open. "We're almost there." He redoubled his efforts, channeling every ounce of his will into maintaining the connection between Vox and Zara. The air in the room seemed to crackle with energy as the genetic fusion reached its climax. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Will's concentration wavered, nearly breaking the delicate connection. "Security breach," someone shouted. "The protesters have broken through the outer perimeter." Dr. Rodriguez's face appeared in Will's field of vision, her expression a mix of concern and drive. "Mr. Ramos, we're almost there. Can you hold on for just a few more moments?" Will nodded weakly, his entire being focused on the task at hand. The world around him faded away, leaving only the pulsing energy of the Zanari reproductive process. With a final surge of effort, Will felt something click into place. A wave of relief washed over him as Vox and Zara's genetic material successfully fused. His last conscious thought was of triumph before darkness claimed him. Will drifted in and out of consciousness, catching snippets of conversation around him. Unsuccessful fusion was unprecedented data. Special forces have secured the perimeter. When he finally opened his eyes, he found himself in a recovery room, surrounded by beeping monitors. Vox and Zara stood nearby, their skin glowing with a soft, contented light. "You did it, Will," Zara said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've given us the greatest gift imaginable." Will tried to speak, but his throat was dry. A nurse offered him water, which he gratefully accepted. Dr. Rodriguez entered the room, her face beaming with excitement. "Mr. Ramos, how are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a truck," Will croaked. "But it worked?" "Beyond our wildest expectations," Dr. Rodriguez confirmed. "The data we've gathered will revolutionize our understanding of Zanari biology. And there's more. The neural interface seems to have left you with residual connections to Zanari memories and experiences. This could be a breakthrough in interspecies communication." As Will processed this information, the door opened again. Dr. Bennett strode in, followed by a tall, imposing man in military uniform. "Will, I'd like you to meet General Jonathan Hayes," Dr. Bennett said. "He's here to discuss the broader implications of what's happened here today." General Hayes stepped forward, his expression grave but not unkind. "Mr. Ramos, I won't sugarcoat this. What happened here tonight has the potential to change the course of human-alien relations forever. We need to talk about what comes next." Will looked from the general to Dr. Bennett, then to Vox and Zara, and finally to Dr. Rodriguez. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of alien memories and newfound responsibility settling on his shoulders. Whatever came next, he knew his life would never be the same. The world around Will slowly came into focus as he processed the gravity of General Hayes' words. The weight of alien memories still lingered in his mind, a constant reminder of the extraordinary events that had transpired. "I understand, General," Will said, his voice hoarse but determined. "What do you need to know?" Before the general could respond, a commotion erupted outside the recovery room. Dr. Rodriguez burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement and urgency. "The embryo," she exclaimed. "It's developing at an unprecedented rate. We need to move quickly." Will's heart raced as he struggled to sit up. Vox and Zara looked at each other, their luminescent skin pulsing with a mix of joy and concern. "What's happening?" Will asked, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes gleamed with scientific fervor. "The genetic fusion was more successful than we could have imagined. The embryo is growing rapidly, and we need to transfer it to a specialized incubation chamber immediately." General Hayes nodded curtly. "Dr. Bennett, assist Dr. Rodriguez. Mr. Ramos, we'll continue our discussion once the situation is stabilized." As the room emptied, Will found himself alone with Vox and Zara. The Zanari couple approached him, their four-armed bodies moving with fluid grace. "Will," Vox said, his voice a melodic hum, "we cannot express our gratitude fully. What you've done for us." Zara continued, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in what Will now recognized as deep emotion. "You've given us the greatest gift imaginable. Our child. Our future." Will smiled weakly, the enormity of the situation washing over him. "I'm just glad I could help. But what happens now?" Before they could answer, Dr. Bennett reappeared at the door. "Will, we need you in the lab. There's something you should see." Supported by Vox and Zara, Will made his way to the main laboratory. The scene that greeted him was one of controlled chaos. Scientists and technicians moved with purpose. Their actions centered around a large, cylindrical chamber, pulsing with soft blue light. Dr. Rodriguez waved them over, her eyes never leaving the monitors surrounding the incubation chamber. "Will, look at this," she said, pointing to a holographic display of the developing embryo. Will's breath caught in his throat. The image showed a rapidly forming Zanari fetus, its bioluminescent patterns already visible beneath translucent skin. "It's beautiful," Will whispered, reaching out to touch the hologram. As his fingers brushed the display, the embryo's bioluminescent patterns suddenly intensified. Alarms blared throughout the lab. "What's happening?" General Hayes demanded, striding into the room. Dr. Rodriguez's fingers flew over the control panel. "The embryo's biosignatures are spiking. It's responding to Will's presence." Will stared at the hologram, transfixed. He could feel a faint tugging sensation in his mind, an echo of the neural interface that had connected him to Vox and Zara during the procedure. "I can feel it," he murmured. "It's like it knows I'm here." Dr. Bennett's eyes widened. The neural interface must have created a lasting connection between Will and the embryo. This is unprecedented. As the scientists huddled around the monitors, analyzing the data pouring in, Will found himself drawn to the incubation chamber. He placed his hand on the smooth surface, and the embryo's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in response. Incredible, Dr. Rodriguez breathed. The fetus's development accelerates when Will is near. It's as if his presence is nurturing its growth. General Hayes cleared his throat, his expression a mix of awe and concern. This changes everything. Mr. Ramos, it seems you're more deeply involved in this situation than we initially thought. Will turned to face the general, his hand still resting on the incubation chamber. What does this mean for me? For the child? Before Hayes could answer, a commotion erupted in the hallway outside the lab. Councilman James Harper burst into the room, followed by a harried-looking assistant. General Hayes, Harper said, his voice tight with urgency, we have a situation developing outside. The media has gotten wind of what happened here, and the protesters, they're regrouping, and they're not alone. Hayes' expression darkened. Explain. Harper ran a hand through his hair. It's Marcus Graves. He's rallying support for a larger anti-alien movement. We've received intelligence suggesting he's planning coordinated attacks on Zanari communities across the planet. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Will looked from the incubation chamber to Vox and Zara, then to the grim faces of the humans around him. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders, heavier than ever before. Dr. Bennett stepped forward, his voice calm but determined. Will, we need to talk about your future. Given your unique connection to the Zanari child, we believe you have a crucial role to play in its development and survival. Will's mind reeled. What are you saying? We're offering you a position, Dr. Bennett continued. As a dedicated caretaker for the child, it would involve relocation to a secure facility and continued participation in our research. Before Will could respond, Vox and Zara approached, their luminescent skin pulsing with emotion. Will, Zara said softly, we have a proposal of our own. Vox nodded, his alien features somehow conveying warmth and hope. We would like you to become part of our family unit, to help us raise our child as a co-parent. Will's head spun as he tried to process the magnitude of these offers. His gaze darted between the incubation chamber, the anxious faces of the humans, and the hopeful expressions of Vox and Zara. As he opened his mouth to speak, alarms blared once again. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to the incubation chamber, her face pale with concern. The life support systems are failing, she shouted. We're losing stability. Without thinking, Will pushed past the scientists and pressed both hands against the chamber. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind, searching for that faint connection he'd felt earlier. Come on, he whispered. Hold on, we're here. You're safe. The alarms continued to wail as Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked frantically to stabilize the systems. Will remained focused, pouring all his concentration into maintaining that tenuous link with the developing Zanari child. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the alarms began to quiet. The embryo's biosignatures stabilized, its bioluminescent patterns pulsing in sync with Will's heartbeat. As the crisis passed, Will opened his eyes to find everyone in the room staring at him in amazement. Dr. Rodriguez's voice broke the silence, filled with awe and a hint of fear. What you just did, it shouldn't be possible, she said. We need to understand this connection better. The implications for Zanari reproduction, for interspecies communication. General Hayes stepped forward, his expression grave. Mr. Ramos, I think it's clear that you're now a key figure in this situation. Your decisions in the coming days will have far-reaching consequences, not just for yourself, but for human-Zanari relations as a whole. Will nodded slowly, the weight of the moment settling over him. He looked at Vox and Zara, then at the incubation chamber housing their child, a child he now felt inextricably linked to. I understand, he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his mind. Whatever happens next, I'm ready to face it. As if in response to his words, the embryo's bioluminescent patterns flared brightly, casting the room in an otherworldly glow. In that moment, surrounded by humans and aliens alike, Will knew that his life had changed irrevocably. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges both personal and global, but he was committed to seeing it through, for the sake of the child, for Vox and Zara, and for the future of human-Zanari relations. The glow from the incubation chamber intensified, as if the unborn Zanari child was reaching out, seeking connection in a world that was not yet prepared for its arrival. Will placed his hand on the chamber once more, feeling the faint pulse of alien life beneath his palm. Whatever came next, he knew he would not face it alone. Alone. The connection he felt with the developing Zanari child pulsed through him, a constant reminder of the extraordinary path that lay ahead. Over the following weeks, Will's bond with the unborn Zanari grew stronger with each passing day. The research facility buzzed with activity as Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked tirelessly, monitoring the unprecedented human-Zanari connection. Will spent hours each day near the incubation chamber, his presence consistently resulting in accelerated growth and stabilized vital signs for the fetus. The soft blue glow of the chamber became a comforting constant, a visual representation of the life growing within. The fetus's development is progressing at an astonishing rate, Dr. Rodriguez explained during one of their daily briefings. She gestured to a holographic display showing the rapidly forming Zanari child. Its neural pathways are already more complex than those of a human fetus at twice this gestational age. Will leaned in, fascinated by the intricate patterns of light pulsing beneath the translucent skin of the holographic image. "It's beautiful," he murmured. Recognizing the critical nature of Will's role, General Hayes authorized the creation of a specialized living quarters within the facility for Will, Vox, and Zara. The new space was a blend of human and Zanari design, with adaptive environments to accommodate the physiological needs of both species. As they settled into their new home, Will found himself immersed in a crash course on Zanari culture and physiology. Vox and Zara were patient teachers, their bioluminescent patterns shifting with excitement as they shared their knowledge. "In our culture, the nurturing of a child is a communal responsibility," Zara explained one evening as they sat in their shared living area. Her forearms moved in graceful patterns, emphasizing her words. "What you're doing for us, Will, it goes beyond anything we could have hoped for." Vox nodded, his own bioluminescence pulsing in agreement. "You've become part of our family unit in ways we never imagined possible." Will smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the neural interface. "I'm honored to be part of this," he said softly. Their peaceful coexistence was shattered one morning by the urgent voice of Dr. Bennett over the intercom. "Will, Vox, Zara, you need to see this." They hurried to the main conference room, where a large screen displayed news footage from around the world. Will's stomach dropped as he saw the chaos unfolding. Marcus Graves and his anti-alien extremist group had launched a series of coordinated attacks on Zanari communities across the globe. Buildings burned, terrified Zanari fled through streets, and human protesters clashed violently with those trying to protect the aliens. "This is happening everywhere," Dr. Bennett said gravely. "London, Tokyo, Sydney, New York. Graves has more support than we realized." General Hayes strode into the room, his face grim. "The United Nations is convening an emergency session to address the situation. Councilman Harper will be presenting his proposed legislation for human-alien family units, using your situation as a case study." Will exchanged worried glances with Vox and Zara. Their unique family unit, once a symbol of hope, now stood at the center of a global firestorm. As tensions mounted on the global stage, life within the facility continued its delicate balance. Will's days were split between time at the incubation chamber, medical checkups to monitor his own changing physiology, and strategy sessions with General Hayes and Dr. Bennett. It was during one such session that Dr. Bennett received an urgent communication. His face paled as he listened to the message. "We have a situation," he announced, his voice tight. "A delegation of high-ranking Zanari officials is on their way here, led by Ambassador Krelox. They're demanding to inspect the hybrid embryo and evaluate the human involvement in their species' reproduction." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This was no longer just a matter of Earth politics. The consequences could reach across the stars. As preparations for the Zanari delegation's arrival began in earnest, Will found himself spending even more time near the incubation chamber. The fetus's bioluminescent patterns had become more complex, sometimes shifting in response to Will's thoughts and emotions. It was during one of these quiet moments that disaster struck. The lights flickered, then went out entirely. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing the room in an eerie red glow, but Will could hear the incubation chamber's alarms blaring. Without thinking, he pressed his hands against the chamber's surface, reaching out with his mind to connect with the fetus. He could feel its distress, the delicate balance of its environment disrupted by the power failure. "Hold on," Will whispered, pouring all his concentration into maintaining that tenuous link. "I've got you. Stay with me." Time seemed to stretch as Will stood there, his world narrowing to the pulsing light beneath his palms and the faint presence he could feel in his mind. He barely noticed when Dr. Rodriguez and her team rushed into the room, working frantically to restore power to the chamber. As the minutes ticked by, Will felt a strange sensation building within him. The embryo's bioelectrical field intensified, its energy seeming to flow through Will in waves. His vision began to blur, the room spinning around him. The last thing Will heard before darkness claimed him was Dr. Rodriguez's panicked voice. "His neural activity is off the charts. We need to break the connection now." But it was too late. Will collapsed to the floor, slipping into a coma as the chamber's alarms continued to wail. The last thing he saw was a brilliant flash of light from within the incubation chamber, as if the unborn Zanari child was reaching out, trying to hold on to the connection even as Will's consciousness faded away. In the chaos that followed, no one noticed the maintenance workers who slipped away from their posts, their eyes glinting with malice as they activated hidden devices throughout the facility. Marcus Graves's most ambitious attack was about to begin, and the fate of human-Zanari relations hung in the balance. The facility shuddered as another explosion rocked its foundations. Alarms blared, their urgent wails punctuated by the sound of crumbling concrete and twisting metal. In the incubation chamber, Will lay motionless on the floor, his connection to the Zanari fetus severed by his sudden loss of consciousness. Dr. Rodriguez, her face illuminated by the pulsing red emergency lights, worked feverishly to stabilize the chamber's systems. "We're losing power to the life support," she shouted, her fingers flying over the control panel. "The fetus's vitals are critical." Vox and Zara huddled close to the chamber, their luminescent skin flickering with distress. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted from within the incubation pod, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When the light faded, they gasped in astonishment. The reinforced chamber doors groaned under the assault of Graves' followers, the metal beginning to warp and buckle. Just as it seemed the doors would give way, a thunderous explosion from the opposite direction shook the room. Through the settling dust, Captain Michael Torres and his rapid response team emerged, their weapons raised. "Secure the perimeter," Torres barked, his eyes quickly assessing the situation. "We have multiple hostiles incoming." As Torres' team engaged Graves' extremists in a fierce firefight, Dr. Rodriguez turned her attention to the incubation pod. To her amazement, a fully formed Zanari-human hybrid infant lay within, its chest rising and falling with its first breaths. "Impossible," she whispered, quickly checking the child's vital signs. The infant's skin shimmered with an iridescent glow, intricate bioluminescent patterns pulsing across its tiny body. "The accelerated development, it's unprecedented." As if responding to the child's arrival, Will's eyes snapped open. He gasped, his body arching as a surge of energy coursed through him. The same energy rippled through Vox and Zara, creating a visible connection between the three adults and the newborn. Will struggled to his feet, drawn inexorably toward the incubation pod. As he placed his hand on the chamber's surface, a powerful empathic link formed. The infant's emotions flooded his mind, confusion, fear, but also an innate curiosity about the world it had just entered. "She's scared," Will said, his voice hoarse. "But she's strong, so strong." Dr. Rodriguez nodded, her hands steady as she worked to stabilize the child. "Her physiology is like nothing I've ever seen, a perfect blend of human and Zanari traits." The room shook violently, chunks of ceiling crashing down around them. Captain Torres shouted over the din of battle. "We need to move now. This whole section is coming down." Will, Vox, and Zara formed a protective circle around the incubation pod, their bodies emitting a soft, pulsating glow. As Torres and his team fought to clear a path, the trio carefully lifted the pod, their movements perfectly synchronized. "Stay close," Torres ordered, leading the way through the crumbling facility. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of weapons fire. Will could sense the fear and dedication of those around him, the emotions amplified by his newfound empathic abilities. They had almost reached the exit when Will suddenly stiffened. "Wait," he said, his eyes unfocused. "Graves. He's close. Coming from the left corridor." Torres reacted instantly, signaling two of his team to take up defensive positions. Seconds later, Marcus Graves burst into view, his face contorted with rage. "The abomination must not be allowed to live," he screamed, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, Torres tackled him to the ground. The two men grappled fiercely, but Torres's combat training gave him the edge. With a swift, precise movement, he disarmed Graves and pinned him to the floor. "Marcus Graves, you're under arrest for terrorism, attempted murder, and a whole list of other charges I'll enjoy reciting later," Torres growled, securing Graves's hands behind his back. As they emerged from the facility, the scene that greeted them was one of controlled chaos. Emergency vehicles surrounded the area, their lights painting the night in flashes of red and blue. A short distance away, a sleek Zenari ship hovered, its otherworldly design a stark contrast to the human vehicles below. Ambassador Krelox strode forward, flanked by a delegation of Zenari officials. Their bioluminescent patterns shifted rapidly, conveying a mix of concern and curiosity. "We demand to see the child," Krelox stated, his multifaceted eyes fixed on the incubation pod. General Hayes stepped between the ambassador and the new family, his posture rigid. "Ambassador, I assure you that the child is safe and receiving the best possible care. However, given the current situation, I must insist that we move them to a secure location before any further discussions take place." Krelox's skin flashed with patterns of frustration, but he nodded reluctantly. "Very well, but I request an immediate private audience with the family once they are settled." As medical personnel swarmed around them, Will felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The events of the past hours seemed surreal, yet the tiny life in the incubation pod grounded him in a new reality. He looked at Vox and Zara, seeing his own mix of fear and wonder reflected in their alien features. "What happens now?" Will asked softly, his hand resting protectively on the pod. Dr. Bennett approached, his face etched with a combination of concern and excitement. "Now, we adapt. Your family is unique in the history of both our species. It won't be easy, but you won't face it alone." As they were ushered toward awaiting transport, Will caught sight of a news camera capturing the scene. He realized with a jolt that their emergence from the rubble, human, Zenari, and hybrid child united, would be broadcast around the world. Their family, forged in crisis, was about to become a symbol for a new era in human-Zenari relations. The transport's doors closed, sealing them in a bubble of relative calm. As they sped away from the scene of destruction, Will felt the infant's consciousness brush against his mind. In that touch, he sensed not just the child's immediate needs, but the vast potential of what she represented. The journey ahead was uncertain, but in that moment, cradling new life born of two worlds, Will felt a spark of hope for the future. Future. The transport hummed softly as it carried them away from the chaos, towards an uncertain destiny. As the adrenaline of their escape faded, Will felt the weight of exhaustion settle over him. He looked at Vox and Zara, their alien features etched with a mixture of worry and wonder that mirrored his own emotions. Between them, the incubation pod pulsed with a soft, rhythmic light, its precious cargo safely nestled within. The transport came to a stop, and General Hayes opened the door. "We're here," he said, his voice low. "Ambassador Krelox is waiting for you inside." Will exchanged glances with Vox and Zara. They nodded, a silent agreement passing between them. Together, they carefully lifted the incubation pod and followed General Hayes into a nondescript building. Ambassador Krelock stood in the center of a sparse room, his multifaceted eyes gleaming in the artificial light. As the door closed behind them, the Zanari diplomat's skin rippled with patterns of curiosity and anticipation. "I appreciate your willingness to meet under these circumstances," Krelock began, his voice a melodious hum. "The situation we find ourselves in is unprecedented, with far-reaching implications for both our species." Will stepped forward, his hand resting protectively on the incubation pod. "We understand, Ambassador. What exactly are you proposing?" Krelock's skin shimmered with what Will had come to recognize as the expression of deep thought. "The Zanari High Council has been in urgent discussions since news of your child's existence reached us. We propose a joint human-Zanari citizenship for your offspring." The room fell silent as the implications of this offer sank in. Vox was the first to speak, her bioluminescent patterns flickering rapidly. "Such an arrangement has never existed before. What would it mean for our child?" "It would mean," General Hayes interjected, "that your child would be recognized as a citizen of both Earth and the Zanari homeworld. It's an olive branch, a gesture of goodwill and cooperation between our species." As they discussed the details of this unprecedented proposal, Will felt a gentle pressure against his mind. He looked down at the incubation pod, where the infant stirred, her tiny form visible through the translucent surface. In that moment, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. The secure living facility became a hub of scientific and diplomatic fervor. Dr. Rodriguez led a team of human and Zanari medical experts, working tirelessly to monitor and care for the newborn hybrid child. Will, Vox, and Zara found themselves at the center of it all, navigating the complex waters of new parenthood, while under the watchful eyes of two worlds. They named their daughter Luna, a nod to both her ethereal appearance and the hope she represented, a bridge between two vastly different civilizations. Luna's growth and development surpassed all expectations. By the end of her first month, she was already displaying abilities that melded human and Zanari traits in ways no one had anticipated. Her skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her moods, a visual language all her own. One afternoon, as Will cradled Luna in his arms, he noticed a small toy floating inches above her outstretched hand. He called for Dr. Rodriguez, who rushed into the room with her team. "Incredible," Dr. Rodriguez breathed, carefully documenting Luna's display of bioelectric manipulation. "She's exhibiting abilities we didn't expect to see for years, if at all." As Luna continued to grow and develop, Will found himself experiencing strange flashes of memory, vivid images of alien landscapes and unfamiliar rituals. Dr. Bennett, intrigued by this development, ordered a series of brain scans. "The neural interface used during Luna's conception has left lasting changes in your brain structure," Dr. Bennett explained, pointing to areas of unusual activity on the scan results. "You're experiencing Zanari ancestral memories, Will. This could revolutionize our understanding of both species." Others, the peaceful routine they had begun to establish was shattered one night by the blare of alarms. General Hayes burst into their living quarters, his face grim. "We have a security breach. A group of Zanari extremists has infiltrated the facility." Will's heart raced as he scooped Luna into his arms. He could feel her fear through their empathic link, her tiny body trembling against his chest. Vox and Zara moved to flank them, their bodies tensed for action. "Stay close," General Hayes ordered, leading them through dimly lit corridors. The sound of weapons fire echoed in the distance, growing closer with each passing moment. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a group of Zanari, their skin patterns pulsing with anger and disgust. "The abomination must not be allowed to live," one of them snarled, raising a weapon. Time seemed to slow. Will felt a surge of energy course through him, fueled by an instinct to protect that transcended species. He reached out with his mind, drawing on the strange new abilities granted by his altered neural structure. A wave of empathic force radiated from Will, washing over the attackers. Their expressions shifted from hatred to confusion, then to shock as they experienced a flood of emotions. Will's love for Luna, Vox, and Zara's devotion to their family, and Luna's innocent wonder at the world around her. The weapons clattered to the floor as the Zanari extremists staggered back, overwhelmed by the empathic assault. General Hayes and his security team moved in swiftly, securing the stunned attackers. In the aftermath of the attack, as Luna slept peacefully in her crib, Will stood before a panel of human and Zanari officials. Councilman Harper, his face lined with both excitement and concern, addressed the group. "What we've witnessed here goes beyond anything we could have imagined," Harper began. "It's clear that we need a new approach to managing interspecies relations and protecting hybrid families like Will's." Ambassador Krelox nodded in agreement, his skin patterns reflecting a mix of admiration and caution. "The Zanari High Council concurs. We propose the establishment of a joint human-Zanari community, a place where our species can live and work together in harmony." As the officials debated the details of this bold new initiative, Will's mind drifted to Luna. He could sense her dreams, a kaleidoscope of colors and sensations that blended her human and Zanari heritage. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that Luna represented a new chapter in the story of both their species, a future where the boundaries between human and alien began to blur, opening up possibilities as vast and mysterious as the stars themselves. As the dust settled from the attack on the facility, Will, Vox, and Zara found themselves thrust into a whirlwind of diplomatic negotiations and scientific curiosity. The newly established human-Zanari community beckoned, promising a fresh start for their unconventional family. However, fate had other plans. One evening, as Will cradled Luna in his arms, a holographic message flickered to life in their living quarters. Ambassador Krelox's multifaceted eyes gleamed with excitement as he delivered the news. "Greetings, honored family," Krelox began, his skin patterns pulsing with enthusiasm. "The Zanari High Council extends an invitation for you to visit our homeworld. Your presence is requested for a cultural exchange program, the first of its kind." Will's heart raced as he absorbed the magnitude of this offer. He glanced at Vox and Zara, their alien features alight with a mix of surprise and anticipation. The next few days were a flurry of activity. Dr. Bennett ran a battery of tests to ensure Luna's health during interstellar travel, while General Hayes briefed them on security protocols. Councilman Harper, his face etched with both pride and concern, emphasized the historic nature of their journey. As they boarded the sleek Zanari vessel, Will felt a surge of emotions, excitement, apprehension, and a deep sense of responsibility. Luna, nestled in a specially designed biocradle, cooed softly, her skin shimmering with patterns of curiosity. The journey through space was a revelation. Will spent hours gazing out the viewport, marveling at the cosmic ballet of stars and nebulae. Vox and Zara took turns explaining Zanari navigation techniques, their words painting pictures of a universe far more interconnected than humans had ever imagined. As they approached the Zanari homeworld, Will's breath caught in his throat. The planet was a swirling orb of bioluminescent continents and shimmering oceans. Cities floated in the sky, their structures defying human notions of architecture. Their ship descended through layers of iridescent clouds, coming to rest on a landing platform that seemed to pulse with life. As the airlock hissed open, Will was struck by a wave of familiar yet alien sensations, the result of his neural interface-induced memories. Xanthor, the Zanari High Counselor, stood waiting to greet them. His towering form was adorned with intricate bioluminescent patterns that Will instinctively recognized as symbols of highest authority. "Welcome to Zenra," Xanthor intoned, his voice a melodious hum that seemed to resonate on multiple frequencies. "Your presence here marks a new chapter in the history of our peoples." As they stepped onto Zanari soil, Luna let out a delighted gurgle. To everyone's astonishment, the ground beneath her feet lit up in response, creating a dazzling display of colors that spread outward in concentric circles. Xanthor's eyes widened, his skin flashing with patterns of awe and excitement. "Incredible," he breathed. "The child possesses a natural affinity for our bioelectrical fields." The next few weeks were a blur of new experiences and groundbreaking discoveries. Will found himself navigating alien customs with surprising ease, drawing on his implanted memories to bridge cultural divides. Vox and Zara, in their role as cultural ambassadors, worked tirelessly to explain human concepts to their fellow Zanari. Luna became the center of attention in the Zanari scientific community. Her ability to manipulate bioelectrical fields surpassed even the most optimistic predictions. Will watched in amazement as his daughter, barely out of infancy, caused entire Zanari data systems to light up with a mere touch. One afternoon, as Luna played in a specially designed bioelectric nursery, Dr. Genra, the lead Zanari scientist, approached Will with an expression of barely held-back excitement. "We've been analyzing Luna's unique physiology," Dr. Genra explained, her skin rippling with patterns of scientific fervor. "Her hybrid DNA allows her to interface with our technology in ways we never thought possible. We believe she could be the key to a new field of bioelectrical engineering." Will listened intently as Dr. Genra outlined a proposed collaboration between human and Zanari scientists, with Luna at its center. The implications were staggering: advancements in clean energy, medical treatments, and even space travel. As their visit neared its end, Will found himself standing on a balcony overlooking the bioluminescent expanse of the Zanari capital. Vox and Zara joined him, their presence a comforting reminder of the journey they had embarked on together. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Vox murmured, her hand intertwining with Will's. Zara nodded, her eyes reflecting the shimmering cityscape. "I never imagined we'd be standing here like this." Their moment of reflection was interrupted by the arrival of Xanthor and a delegation of Zanari officials. The High Counselor's skin pulsed with patterns that Will had come to recognize as a mix of anticipation and solemnity. "Honored family," Xanthor began, his multifaceted eyes gleaming in the bioluminescent light, "we have a proposal to present to you." Will listened intently as Xanthor outlined the Zanari High Council's bold initiative, the establishment of a permanent human embassy on their homeworld, with Will, Vox, Zara, and Luna as its first residents. The weight of the decision pressed upon them. Will glanced at Vox and Zara, seeing his own mix of excitement and apprehension reflected in their alien features. Luna, oblivious to the momentous nature of the conversation, giggled as she manipulated tiny bioelectrical fields between her fingers. As they stood on the precipice of this new chapter in human-Zanari relations, Will knew that their answer would shape not just their family's future, but the future of both species. The universe, vast and full of possibilities, awaited their decision.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.